Hello everyone, I realize that you're probably gonna see this outfit and this Whitney in a couple of videos now, but I think this is the first and last time I'll look presentable in a while, so I figured might as well film a lot of things I've been meaning to film while I look really hot. Therefore, today I'm going to be filming a long-awaited review of The Cottage and Its Lady by Beatrice Bugane. Bugane? Ugh, I really should have asked before I tried to pronounce it. I know I've mentioned this several times, but I'm not sure if you picked it up, but Beatrice is a fellow YouTuber. She goes by the username Books Over Looks, and she is fantastic. I adore her channel, so I will link her in the down bar along with a link where you can find her book, because it's just novella-sized, and let me tell you, it is fantastic. The Cottage and Its Lady is about an old woman who lives by herself and sticks to a very strict routine on how her days go out. Or are planned out, rather. She goes to the grocery store once a week and she spends the rest of her days reading, cooking, and doing around the house cleaning. And it's very strictly scheduled, and so whenever her daughter sends her a letter that she's going to visit her, she gets kind of freaked out. This lady has to deal with a conflict in her schedule and just having to adjust to new things happening, and then in the end, it's just this huge mind-boggling event of like, almost a slip into insanity. I don't know how to describe this without spoiling it, but dang, I was blown away by the end of it. I couldn't not rate it 5 stars. I gave this novella 5 out of 5 stars because I felt that it was just really kind of, it's not like anything I've ever read before, and I know I don't obviously read novellas very much, but I just found myself in the beginning like, but then at the end, everything wrapped up and came together, and it was so mind-blowing that like half the things I had said were bad about it became like rational and made sense, and then I like big scribbles and X's, and I'm like, it worked in the end. So I know people who don't finish books they don't like probably wouldn't like this because they'd get through the first couple chapters being like, but I promise everything just comes together and I'm like, oh my god, oh my god. I'm going to talk about the one thing that, or start off talking about the one thing that I made the most notes about, which is her writing. Like I said, in the beginning I was very skeptical about where this book was headed because her writing is really not typical of something I would usually read or something I don't think anybody would write that often. It was very formal and structured, which now describing the old woman I realize now is pretty applicable, but it was done where it's like, I did this, I said this, I thought this, and then everything was done where it had no contraptions, and so it was like, I do not, and it was really kind of boxy to me, and I was like really uncomfortable with it at first because I was like, this is just not making sense to me, it's not flowing, I don't know what the deal is, but it wasn't hard to read is the thing. So even though I was like struggling internally because I was like, this is just a struggle because it's such boring writing, like structurally, it was still, I could still get through it, and it was still beautifully, like, the word choice was beautiful, and even though it was just put into the structure that made it seem so, like, boxy and just, I couldn't put it down because it was just somehow, this is the biggest oxymoron, but it was done beautifully. And then, of course, like I said several times now, in the end it came together because I was like, oh, this is an old woman who wants her life together, and that's pretty much why she's writing that way. Or at least, I hope I'm interpreting it the right way, because if that was not intended, then this would be a whole different story, but it definitely worked with who the character was and how she wrote. Jumping back over to her word choice, I just wanted to say that it sounds very descriptive, and she has a lot of really great analogies and figurative language, and it's the type of writing that I really like, where it's like, really, it gives you an image without describing something. Does that make sense? It's like, really reminded me of Ransom Riggs. That's the note I made, because I love Ransom Riggs' writing. I think he's a very descriptive writer, and I love everything he does. And this really walked the line of how he writes. And if she writes other things that aren't written in such a boxy, I don't have a different adjective to describe it as, so I'm gonna keep using boxy and structured tone, that I'm pretty sure she would be like New York Times bestseller, because darn diddly do, I enjoyed that. I have several things marked in this book you may have saw, so I'm gonna read some of these off. Let's see here. The first thing I marked was, a string of conversation is suspended in my mind, and at this point it reveals itself so lucidly it is as if I'm listening to it again. Another phrase I really liked goes, I am not afraid, but I am apprehensive, and somehow that is worse. And another, I enjoy the company, and yet I do not seek it. And another one, I'll give you a little bit of context. Ravi is her grandson, and this quote says, and though I am not one to trust rapidly, Ravi's youth is contagious. It is as if he is almost a part of me, and for that inexplicable reason I am drawn to the idea of believing in him. It is almost thrilling to make this decision. I know that it is seemingly a small one, and yet it makes all the difference. Another one? I have never quite liked waiting. I have found it difficult and, in certain times, unworthy of its outcome. But today I am not counting the amount of people who stand in front of me. I am not thinking of how slowly the line is moving. Today I am simply waiting. And the last one, which was more of just a personal application rather than its writing style, it reminds me vaguely of my fascination with the squirrel I once saw swiftly running along a tree trunk. I do not remember where I had seen it. Perhaps I never did, and I read it in a book instead. So now I hope that you can kind of tell what I'm talking about, where it's still very structured and very formal sounding, but yet it has a really nice, like, flow to it just because the words are strung together so beautifully. And it might have sounded a little like it's trying too hard to some of you, because that's what I thought it sounded like at first, but trust me, as soon as you put the character in with all the words, it just makes sense. Next, let's talk about the characters, because I really liked them. For me to become attached to a character, I typically, like, demand character development and, like, show me their appearance and have them interact with people. However, in this book, I have no clue what did it, but every single character that came in this book, even if it was just some random person on the street that was in the book for, like, half a page, I was like, I care about you. What happened to that guy over there? They were just done so vividly in the great way that she writes, so that even characters that are literally not even meant to matter in the plot, I'm still like, care about them, and I'm like, if that person would have gotten hit by a car right after that scene, I would have been like, wow, thanks a lot, life. Again, they're just done so realistically, and 2 thumbs up. I think for such a short amount of time to have me remember and love those not even side characters, just like insignificant characters, that was just fantastic and bravo. And that ends this review. I'm so glad you took the time to watch this review. I will see you next time, and toodles, and hope you're having a nice day. Or night. It's night here. I'll probably upload this during the day though. It's night everywhere at some point of the day though, so it might be night where this is just confusing. Goodbye!